Thank you all for joining us today on the attention stage, and thanks for melting with me. Because you're here, you've obviously got my attention, but you came willingly, so you've also got your intention as well. You're coming here for something, you're getting something out of it. And actually, when we think about advertising in it as a sort of discipline, automatically we think of paid stuff. And actually, apart from us, the sort of like 0.5% in the world, it's actually an annoyance to most people. We're pests. We talk about disrupting, we talk about standing out, we talk about moving the needle, we talk about cutting through the noise. It's all very cheesy, it's all very me. If my friends spoke like that at the pub, I wouldn't really want to speak to them. So, I come from sort of world of organic media. What if we tried to like resonate instead of just reach? What if we give instead of just try to get? And this is where organic media really plays its part. It's where attention and intention meet. We're meeting our audience in the places, on the platforms that they want to spend their time on, where they want to get educated, where they want to get entertained, and the brands that they want to spend their time with. So I'm Paul Norris, I'm Organic Media Director here at Journey Further. We're a global marketing agency. We've got offices in New York, London, and lovely Leeds. And over the years, I've been sort of very privileged to work with brands such as Barber, Liberty, Adobe, Casio, and a couple of others there. So what is organic media? When we talk about organic media, it's very much a sort of a joining of two worlds. You've got owned media and then you've got your earned media channels. So you can see some of the biggies here. You might have your sort of like organic search, obviously new on the scene relatively. You've got LLMs and AI search. You've got social, editorial and press, where your digital PR activity might look to get placed. But then you've also got your sort of like dark social platforms. You've got your WhatsApps, messengers, etc. And then you've got your community forums. You've got Reddit, Mumsnet, Quora. You've got your Substack sort of publishing platforms. These are all places people go willingly with attention and intention. They're looking for content. They're looking for value. They're looking for a good time oftentimes. And the reason why organic media has seen a sort of real surge over the last few years is because consumption has really shifted. Over the past 10 years, the number of sort of digital touch points that people have in their daily lives has increased by more than double. And sort of just over the last month, we've seen that people spend more times on their sort of mobile devices on the small screen than they do in these big shared environments watching TV on the bigger screen. So, I'm sure you've all sort of very aware of this, but Google's sort of interpretation, and which does reflect very well in a lot of spaces, is this sort of like multi-touch, messy middle essentially. You've got your exposure phase, which is, again, awareness, right through to exploration, evaluation, experience, and then purchase. Throughout this whole sort of user journey, you've got all of these different, what we call sources of influence. So you might do some really cool paid advertising, some shit-hot creative, but people aren't daft. Through that whole phase, they're exploring and evaluating. So if you haven't got your organic media on point, all your paid activity and spend could be lost to competitors doing this very well. So a couple of sort of the most recent and decent platforms where people are spending their time, where all your audience is spending their time: YouTube, a lot of like social discovery platforms. Then you might go for an evaluation, exploration around sort of like the authentic community spaces like your Reddits, etc., for some sort of like real human evaluation. So these are very much your sources of influence. It's meeting your audience where they spend their time. And LLMs and AI search are very much shaping discovery. People are searching in much longer ways. They're being much more bespoke. They're running on for where we might have talked in sort of like keyword ease in like broken English before. people are talking in long conversational questions because Google and these different LLM models are able to interpret and serve better results. But actually, when we look at what these models are serving as their results, it's quite interesting. There's not really a commercial agenda. They're looking to user-generated content, community content, where people are talking about your brand, discussing your brands, comparing your brands. And actually, when we look at ChatGPT and Google's AI overviews, the most cited sources are your Reddits, your YouTubes, your Quoras, your LinkedIns, your P2P review sites as well. So I'm sure a lot of you will already know this. We all, if you're a loser like me, spend too much time on LinkedIn. And you'll see a lot of data, a lot of charts knocking around at the moment. But how can we understand what resonates for our brands and our audiences and sub-segments? We can use some cool tools. So this is Spark Toro. So this is with a men's clothing brand, a men's clothing audience in mind. We're able to find out where this audience spends their time from a platform perspective. So it uses clickstream data and it uses a variety of different social platforms, stitches those all together, and we can see where and where not your audience over and under indexes versus the UK average. So in the men's clothing space, ChatGPT, the audience is using LLMs. They're a bit more sort of tool literate, shall we say. They also mood board quite a bit in Pinterest. They're thinking about what to buy, looking at different sort of looks, looking at different sets. This kind of stuff gives us a much more sort of insight and detail into what type of content will resonate with this audience. We can also use tools such as SimilarWeb to understand what news and media they actually digest, not what we think they digest based on surveys that they might lie about. It uses clickstream data, upstream, downstream data to see which sites they're actually coming from and they visited within the same sort of journey. And then we can dig a little deeper as well. So we know that subreddits are sort of a real treasure trove of rich conversation. Your audience is having really detailed, quite nerdy conversations about your products, about your services, and it's absolutely a goldmine for being able to understand what they're after. And some cool stuff we did with a men's clothing brand recently is we did this type of sort of audience analysis, and we found that a lot of female buyers were buying male clothes. We did this audience analysis and we could actually find that the reason was a lot of wives and girlfriends of their other halves didn't think their guys dressed very well and was actually just looking for better outfits, better ways of communicating to them, why don't you try this, why don't you wear this guy looks cool. And we could only find this by doing this type of analysis. But then what's really cool about sort of AI and automating workflows is we can do this on a constant basis. So we can see where your audience spends their time, what they care about, and instead of doing this sort of on a quarterly or sort of bi-monthly basis, we've got a constant feed, a constant scrape coming through to our Slack or straight through into our content plan to fill that. And there's a lot of hyperbole going around about sort of geo, LLM search, AI search is going to change everything. At the end of the day, it is just a form of earned media. It's looking through its sort of training data, it's looking through the open web to generate results. So you need to be there, and the way to do that is through organic media, through earned media. And through some of the most robust studies at the moment, brand search volume and topical authority are the biggest predictors for success in LLM search. So yeah, sounds an awful lot like organic search to me. Is that going? Excuse me. Sorry, it's paused. Great, thank you. Great. So how do we constantly adapt in this ever-evolving search landscape? In organic media, expertise is absolutely the key. Having that human level of authenticity, and expertise from a human spokesperson or from an advocate, ambassador or partner is absolutely worth its weight in handbag. And this is how you can build trust. And you can do it by building this credible and trustworthy sort of brand image through the content to really aid that content growth and your discoverability. So we've got a tool called Salient, which allows us to do sort of en masse analysis of the media landscape. So we can see what these sources of influence are talking about, what journals like, and what gets strong coverage. And actually, in our analysis of the retail sector over the last 12 months of the strongest pieces of coverage and articles, 69% of brand media that was covered contained an expert. So you can see most of that was advice type pieces and data stories. But then as well, if you can create the news or if you can create trends, that's really powerful as well. So whilst we may pay for reach on the paid side of things, there's a different value exchange to resonate with your organic audience. And very much more so than ever in a web that's getting filled with a lot of AI slop, because the barrier to entry for content production is so low, authentic human expertise wins. And we can see this sort of time and time again for a lot of our brands and a lot of the coverage that we are getting for our types of brands. So when we're talking about the type of activity we should be running, what should we do? What should your brand do? Your activity should really embody your brand. So we work with Oliver Bonus. They're quite seasonal, quite trendy, quite eclectic range of products. They really went hard a couple summers back on this sort of like crustacean themed. I'm sure a few of you people might have a lobster plate like that or a sort of like crab tea towel. But we saw that their buyers pretty on trend, finger on the pulse, stocked these, and we started to see some sort of like blips in their trend data. We saw like a real uplift in purchases. And we made it a trend. We started a trend and surfaced this ourselves and created what we call Crustacean Core, which is, very much sea-themed interiors to get in on the coastal trend. Very aligned with their brand, very aligned with their product range, obviously, and the press absolutely loved it. As you can see there, 1,340% increase in searches, big news. But what about brands that are like smaller, that are challengers, that don't have a lot of capability to sort of, or may not even have the product range to try and jump on that? Here is where you can use sort of reactive organic and reactive digital PR to outmaneuver and outsmart. Hands up if you can remember this, when Rata unfortunately went through divorce, but then spun it and got a divorce ring out of it. Few hands. Cool. So our client, Abellini, a real small player, owner managed, owner run. They can't compete with the big guys, but we saw this opportunity to jump on this and position Nilesh is the owner, as you can see there, as an expert in divorce rings, and he became the de facto. If you look for any of this coverage on the web, Nilesh is attached to Emily Ratajkowski and is the sort of like de facto expert. We created a divorce rings PLP, we created the content, and it really, really did take off. So all of this stuff, it builds relevance, it builds association with your brand in these broader categories and subcategories, not only in the media, but in your traditional organic search, trust signals, and as I mentioned, in AI. AI's got to look for third-party validation. It's looking for different platforms, it's looking for different experts. It knows your brand sites are going to be skewed. They're naturally biased. We all say we're the best, right? Or we'll pretend to. We'll fake it till we make it. So AI looks to these third-party sources. And for this very reason, the reason why a lot of people are flocking to social platforms, social search, such as TikTok, is because they're looking for non-commercial, authentic takes and views on brands, on products. And what we're seeing in a lot of spaces, we work with Lick, who are a home paint brand, real challenger, but have really sort of like really launched, fantastic startup. And what we found was a lot of their sort of like search demand in the sort of like home interior space, traditional search is leveling out. And because it is so visual, because it matters so much to your home, you live in this place, you want the non-commercial real take on it from people you trust, whether that be partners, creators, or friends. So tying into that, community is absolutely your very, very sort of like important secret weapon for fostering trust. As you will have seen, a lot of these like closed groups, like broadcasting on Messenger, on WhatsApp, on Instagram, is really blowing up, and it's a place where you can really foster trust and get your loyal sort of your loyal audience on board. So as I mentioned, we work with Lick, and they've got a colour specialist, Tash, who will, on a weekend, just give up her free time and say, guys, I've got a couple of hours. Does anyone need any help? Do you want to match your like paints with your carpets? Can I help on a bit of a reno project? Things like that. And then obviously you've got other brands where if you've got a super famous owner, it obviously has that built-in audience and loyalty anyway, but absolutely sort of untouched space, which a lot of brands are missing out on. And if we zoom out, why are we here? I'm not saying do organic media, drop your paid media. It's absolutely not that. We need to be top of mind. This is where all of that big paid spend goes, big, cool creative. But we also need to be easy to find. And that's where sort of organic media really, really, really does play its part. So my key advice is to start thinking not in silos. Don't think we'll do this in organic social, we'll do this on our sort of like blog, we'll do this on the search side of things. You need to zoom out and think more like an organic media planner. If you've got creative teams, you need to be building social search into that. You need to be mining these conversations and really understanding what your audience wants and what their sort of pain points are. And we do this for the likes of Adobe, the Frasers Group, and we'll have that sort of like zoomed out multi-content strategy, so everyone's sort of singing off the same hymn sheet. And this is it in action for a global insurance brand. We work with Domestic and General. They used to just do really well organically and on a paid side of things, just really pushing down on sort of the areas that they know are commercially valuable. What was happening though is that they found that they're actually losing footing despite being really strong in the typical sort of like organic search platforms. So what we did was build a multi-content content strategy, a multi-platform content strategy, where we were able to do sort of like couple day shots, but build out 26 videos in tons of different formats. So we've got it vertical for your stories, for TikTok. We've got longer form for YouTube, but then we can also cut and slice and dice that on the web through owned and earned media and paid channels too. And then talking about this on a bigger scale, if we really sort of like hone into it, relevance and creating relevant content in all these different sort of platforms and these sources of influence is more important than ever. And you can't just do it in spurts, it needs to be always on. So as a way we sort of, what is relevance? We built a tool that uses AI to essentially measure relevance at scale, so we can say, look, is this content, is this coverage, is this platform relevant to your brand? And we worked with Marks and Spencer, so they tasked us with 5 business units that they were particularly not as well known for, their stickiest, sort of more difficult business units. And we built this sort of like organic content strategy, this sort of like flywheel of always on content through organic social, through digital PR, through on-site content. And as a result, by talking about them on the platforms positively, in the spaces that their audience spends their time, we were able to get some sort of really, really strong pickup. And it made a big difference. Their organic market share in these 5 sticky categories moved from 7th to 2nd over a 24-month period. So although it's organic, right? You can't just switch it on and off. You need to get things moving, you need to get that sort of on-ramp, you need to get everyone working together. It really does work. And as you can see from a traditional organic search point of view, it really sort of moved the needle. Driving 3,001 new keywords, it smashed it on social. But more than that, we built a process that's repeatable. Cool. So finally, wrapping up, some key takeaways. First and foremost, find out what your audience's sources of influence are. Every brand is different, and your different subsegments of audience will be completely different too. But understanding where they spend their time, what content they like, what their pain points are is really key. Organic media planning is here, and we need to start thinking like that. You can't expect the sort of like SEO guy to do all this. It's not their wheelhouse. They won't know a lot about that. Same for digital PR, same for organic social. You need that sort of like media planner mindset. Double down on expertise. Now it's more than ever. Now it's more easier than ever since the sort of like bar to produce content is so low. Human expertise really can't be faked. Invest in it. And cheesy, but brand authenticity absolutely matters. We're seeing this whole sort of like trend and backlash with unhinged social media profiles, and it's happening because a lot of people's sort of like brand image, tone, messaging, it's all homogenizing. No one's really standing out for good reasons. And yeah, and if you want sort of us to take a look, we will can also provide like a free organic media audit for your brand as well, if you find that useful, because I know it can be sometimes quite daunting knowing where to start and what to do, what tools to sort of bring in-house, or even what teams and skills to hire in-house as well. Cool, thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. That was really fascinating and an amazing achievement given how astonishingly hot this is. If you think you're hot down there, poor Paul has been baking next to this thing. So listen, we do have one question before we get going, which is about timing. Often in digital marketing, you want very quick results. And it sounds like an awful lot of what you do is sort of tilting the pitch. So in the long term, the conversation changes, and it's like you said, it's a 24-month question rather than a 24-day question. Just given the fact this is a challenge that many people will face in the room, how do you sell that in? How do you create the confidence to get people to stay the course?
It's a good question. So for an established brand, you might have a certain level of sort of like visibility in a certain area in certain categories. So there might be some quick wins to have in those certain categories. Say on the organic search content side of things, I think one of the big untapped space for a lot of brands is organic social. So TikTok are becoming a discovery platform and a search platform in their own right. And to encourage that, the level of reach you can get within a day or two is humongous. And that content required is a lot faster, it's a lot more fleeting due to the natural sort of environment of the feed. So there are different things you can do in that space, and
you can have it all. You can do all of this, and you can
have it all. I mean, the reality
setting a rod for your own back here. So you
need to run multiple streams of activity and know what their limits are and what their role is in the whole journey.
Well, thank you very much, Paul. A big round of applause for
lost about 2 stone there.
No, absolutely. it's like a proper workout here.
Cheers.